Right. Everyone, no BMX lead-in today. It'll be coming up after us, so hopefully you're joining us first for a change. Here, spin everything around here. This week, we're going to be talking about cleaning your drivetrain, not necessarily all and how to keep it running as smooth as possible, especially coming out of the winter months, making sure you get as much of the salt, mud, everything off your bike, because it can just cause a mess as we get into the warmer months where you actually want to get out and ride. So you definitely want to make sure that you leave yourself a nice clean bike for when you get out there. I'll kind of go over what I recommend you have, and then so the key steps and some kind of options you have as far as cleaning our stuff. There's really nothing special to our drivetrain as far as cleaning goes. So if you want a more in-depth video, there's plenty out there that you can check out as well. I know Park Tools does breakdowns on stuff like this. I'm sure Muck-Off does as well. But I'll go through kind of my general method for cleaning and what I would do if I was cleaning my bike. So as far as things you need, or I would recommend you have more towels than you think, because bikes, especially this time of year, are dirty beyond belief. So for your chain and drivetrain, just like shop rags, fine. If you're gonna clean your frame, try to use a microfiber towel. Try to make sure it's a clean one. If you have dirt and rocks and little stones all over your frame, you will scratch your frame endlessly. So if you have a couple, I'd recommend changing them out as you go. And then as far as drivetrain cleaning goes, just some kind of bike degreaser. This is just what we have in the shop. So this is Muck-Off's Eco Degreaser. It works really well. I've used it for a long time. We use it at our bike shop, but there's plenty of other brands out there. I would recommend sticking with a bike-specific degreaser and bike-specific cleaners in general where you can. The price might be a little bit higher, but there are things that are, especially if you have a carbon frame, look for something that says it's been tested on carbon, just because you're going to overspray, you're going to get it on your frame. So the last thing you want is you use something not made for a bike or whatever, and it gets on your frame, and then a few months later you notice your frame is a little bit soft or something like that. So it's always a little bit better to just stick with that and get something. It might cost you a little bit more in the long run, but it's a lot cheaper than a new frame. So that's why I'd recommend bike degreaser, and then some kind of chain lube. Over here in California, most of the year, 95% of the year, it's dry. So I only have dry lube in the shop. But if you live in England, East Coast, up in Canada, anywhere where it's wet, especially during the winter, make sure you get a wet chain lube, a wet weather chain lube. They do vary. If you use a dry chain lube in the wet, it comes off very easily. If you use a wet chain lube in the dry, it's not a huge deal. They tend to grab more like grit and hold on to stuff. So if you do use a wet chain lube in the dry, you may have to clean it more often than you would think. And then this is just a sprayer with water in it, nothing special. Just if you have like a filtered water, that's probably better, just so you don't leave any salts or anything on it. Otherwise, a hose on really low pressure, you don't want to like blast anywhere with bearings with a jet. You'll see race mechanics use pressure washers. They can then tear the frame apart and rebuild it. So I would recommend, if you're going to use anything, a hose that's on low pressure or like a mist setting, just to get soap and dirt off, but nothing too crazy. This is a bike wash. So if you're going to be cleaning your frame as well, some kind of bike wash. You can use other things. On my frames, I've used like neutral dish soaps mixed with water, but make sure they're not acidic. You don't want anything that can damage your frame or cause you any headaches down the road. The last thing you want is paint reacting with soap that you thought was safe for it. So pick a natural, no acid dish soap if you're going to go that route. Otherwise, like I said with the degreaser, stick with a bike wash specific thing, and then you should be good to go. All right, so that's kind of the stuff you need. Well, I guess that's the cleaners. Things I recommend grabbing again, this is Muck-Off branded, but I'm sure there's other brands that do it. If you have a disc brake bike, all this does is it goes on your disc brake, take that side off, and then you can Velcro this side on when there is a disc here. It just protects it from overspray. So when you're spraying your degreaser, now you don't have to worry as much about, it can get on your frame, but if it gets on your rotors, at best, it's just noisy and annoying and it goes away after your first couple brakes. At worst, your braking power changes because now you have this chemical on your brake rotor that then gets on your brake pads, and then you end up having to change both your pads and your rotors if it's bad enough. So it's definitely a nice to have. You can also use a towel, or if you have like a plastic folder or something, you can cut a little slit in it and put it here, and it'll do the same job. But there are bike specific ones if you want to spend some extra money on it and you have the ability to. And then some kind of brush is always good because you'll just destroy towels trying to clean teeth. I would recommend gloves. Bikes, like I said earlier, are messier than you expect, and your hands, if you're cleaning more than one bike, it's just, it's a big mess. If you're gonna get, it's always good to have some tools around, so a multi-tool of some kind or an Allen key set, just in case you notice something is loose while you're cleaning. This is always a good time to just double check things like your derailleur bolt and tighten it back up. Then from there, I guess we could start cleaning. This is our little hand crank machine. It's not an actual bike, obviously, but it'll do the job for us today. So if you're not going to take anything off, you can totally clean everything with everything on the bike, and that's perfectly fine, and you'll get a good enough cleaning. You would just start from here, generally not on this side of the bike, but we'll do it like cooking show style here from this side. You're just going to spray your degreaser on, make sure it's all over your cassette, and then you can kind of pick a point on the chain and just pedal the bike and spray degreaser. I've probably sprayed way too much, but I can't see very well, so we're just going to go with it. And then normally you'll see on the can, maybe brands have different suggestions, but you want to leave it for a minute, 5 minutes, something like that. So once you spray that stuff on, you can rinse off your bike if you need to. You can spray it with a spray bottle. Try to get some of the dirt wet, so that way you're not trying to chip off dried mud and you're taking paint with it. So yeah, you can let this sit and then you can work on other stuff, check tires, do all that stuff, and then come back to it. But from here, pretty much what you would do is just take a brush like this, and this one has a little hook on the back, so if there is a bunch of mud, you can actually get between the teeth and kind of pick it all out. This cassette's not too bad. So you would just use this side, and you can just scrub at the teeth and slowly kind of backpedal and just keep the cassette moving. And you're just trying to take off all the surface dirt, and then from there you can wipe it down with a rag. Just try to get any remaining dirt off there. Careful with rags like this, a lot of times the teeth or the chain will catch little strands and start to unravel them, so be careful. You always want to be careful with your hands around the chain ring, your cassette. A lot of teeth, a lot of things that, trust me, they do hurt if you get your fingers caught. So just be careful. If you're uncomfortable with it, I'm sure a bike shop will be happy to clean it for you. But if you're going to do this at home, just take your time with it. There's no need to rush and get your finger caught anywhere. That's the last thing we want. Main thing that you're going to notice is probably the dirtiest is your chain. And again, this is a little weird of an angle to do it from, but let's see if I can figure out a good spot. Maybe here. Ooh. You're just gonna backpedal the chain, oh my gosh, and take your rag and kind of hold it there, and you'll see it was a dirty rag already, but the black areas are actually where all of the old lubricant, anything from the road is coming off from the chain and onto the rag. So you just do that a couple times, just kind of keep rotating this and holding this in place. Again, be careful if you're near the jockey wheels or if you're near the cassette. It likes to grab things and pull it in. And then from there, once you think you've got everything good, you can kind of wipe off pulleys. If it's been muddy, you might want to get in with like a little screwdriver, and you can I'll show it with the back of this. Where the pulleys are, you can just kind of get in. There'll generally be a buildup of dirt, lubricant, grease, muck, whatever it is in there, and that's where people really miss stuff, and it just sits in there forever, and then you finally take your chain off and you notice how much of a mess it is. So yeah, once you kind of knock everything off, then it's really just rinse it off with this no hose in here, so just a spray bottle. You just want to get the degreaser back off your bike so that way when you lubricate it, you're not kind of fighting the lubricant with a degreaser that's still on your bike. So we'll just spray it down. Do all that, and then go back through with your towel, preferably a different one, or just pick a clean spot. And then try to get as much water off as you can. You can pedal the bike, it'll throw water everywhere, so and like I said, be careful with towels. All right, let's see, there we go. Pedal the bike and it'll get a good amount of the water off. Or if you have an air compressor, you can also just blast that off with air and that'll take off any little bits of mud or anything like that you missed. So that's always a good little help if you happen to have an air compressor and a little air nozzle you can throw on there and clean it up. And then, so if you go this route, you're about done, you would go to chain lube and you move on. If you want to if your cassette's really bad or you have the time and you just want to do it, what I recommend doing is you take your wheel off, you take your cassette off, which then requires a chain whip and a cassette tool, but then with most cassettes allows you to get to this point where you can actually separate most of the cogs out and the spacers and the lock ring, and you can really clean them if they're bad. Maybe do this every third time you clean your bike or something like that. Whenever you have a free moment or an extra free time, you're not just trying to put your bike away after a ride. This is the way you can get them looking new again. So, but same process. Spray the cleaner on and just kind of scrub away. You can let the degreaser sit for longer. You can do it a couple times until they look like new, essentially, like this. And then from there, you'll just reinstall it on the bike or on the wheel, put the wheel back on the bike, get back to this point, and then, okay, I might need to, let's see if I'll turn this more. So, and then from there, it's not fully dry yet. Make sure your stuff's fully dry before you put chain lube on. Let's see. You're just going to take your chain lube bottle. Most of them have a nozzle that kind of helps drip slowly. But you're just going to try to stay in one spot and just let it kind of drip on there. Oh my gosh. And your goal is to get it on each chain link, kind of in the same place. You want it on the rollers. And then that'll help distribute it across the derailleur, the cassette. From there you can go through, you can shift through the gears, make sure it gets everywhere. If it was a really dry chain, you may have to do it a couple times. You may come around, and then when you check it, it's completely dry already. Just do another pass, just like a light pass on it with the chain lube, and then that's pretty much it. From there, that's kind of basic cleaning and maintenance. We can get into derailleur and shifter maintenance another day as far as cables go, and maybe cleaning the pulleys more in depth or replacing cables and all of that. Yeah, do we have any questions today, Chloe?
So a couple people said hello.
Hello, everyone.
Will be MTB. Can you send one for my new dream build, please?
Maybe. You have to reach out and we'll see what's going on.
Okay, from Cool Atomic. Do you guys have a 1052?
We don't have anything with the smaller than an 11. We've just seen the wear and failure. Anything below an 11 increases exponentially. So we prefer to go to a 12, honestly, depending on your riding style. If you're on an e-bike, we really prefer a 12. But yeah, so nothing smaller than an 11.
Okay. What suppliers can we get you in store from?
That is a good question. If you're a shop, I don't do sales. I'm one of our engineers, so sorry for the slow answer. If you're a shop, I believe JBI and QBP.
That's true. distributors. Yeah.
I think has them in the U.S. And then for international, there's other distributors. Best thing to do is reach out to Tomas. It's TOMAS at boxcomponents.com, and he can get you any answer about distributors and things like that.
We also have a link on our support tab with a list.
And if you go to our support tab, there is a list with all of our global distributors. So that should be the best one.
No other questions.
All right. If there's no other questions, if I went too fast, if I missed anything, you can always ask questions in the comments here. You can ask them next week if you watch this late and you get back to us, and then I can try to answer them there. Or if you want a more, like I said earlier, if you want a more in-depth cleaning video on bikes with the whole frame, with everything else, I highly recommend. There's great ones out there. Park Tool, they do really well in this kind of world. So I'd recommend looking at their stuff. But if you want to ask us questions, we're more than happy to answer them. So you can get to us on live chat. We're on the phones Monday to Thursday. You can email us, orders@boxcomponent.com or warranty@boxcomponents.com. That'll come to George, and I'll see it as well. So if there's anything out there, just let us know, and we're happy to answer it. If there's nothing else today, Chloe, I think we'll wrap it up there. And you guys have a good weekend. Bye.